The Talksport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.
Hello, Cherries fans. Welcome back to Up the Cherries in all departments. And tonight I'm joined by Denny Mundee. Denny, how you doing?
Yeah, fine. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Dog's there, yeah. Happens to me. That's all good. It's all good. Cool. So yeah, thank you for joining us. To have you on. And yeah, let's get cracking with the first question. The first question for you tonight is, what's your earliest footballing memory?
That would have been when I was at school, St Catherine's School, growing up down in Swindon, playing for my school team. So yeah, that would have been my earliest memories that I can, obviously growing up, I was always kicking around footballs with my brothers, but the earliest games would have been when I played for my school team, which was St Catholics.
Right, okay. So while playing your school days, who was your footballing heroes at the time?
I've always been a Tottenham supporter.
Right.
And me growing up at the time, when the likes of Glenn Hoddle and obviously certain players like that, they were always my heroes. And it's still been the same now. I'm still a massive Glenn Hoddle fan, even though, he's not playing. But yeah, he was my idol.
Yeah, Glenn Hoddle. So obviously you've mentioned about your school, playing for your school. Did you play for any local youth sides while you were growing up?
Yeah, we used to have St Joseph's Youth, which was a local Saturday side that we played, which kids signed up for. And yeah, basically we was the best youth team around. We used to win the league and, the cups every year, really. We had, some good players and obviously other players that were there that went, to pro clubs, but didn't end up making it. They done like a first year or second year pro, but never got in and then, wandered out. But yeah.
Oh, okay. Excellent. You were known, obviously, as being a utility player. We'll touch a little bit more on that a little bit later on. But when you were growing up, did you play in various different positions? Did you have a favourite position? Or
no? As growing up, I was always a centre forward. I always played striker. The most I scored once in one game was 14.
Wow, 14.
Yeah, and that was for St Joseph's. We beat, I don't know, someone, I think it was Sarson Colts or someone like that, 24-0. So, yeah, I mean, at the time, I was always a striker. And I even, went to Bournemouth as a striker.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, just to touch on a little bit more before we touch on your spell at Bournemouth. If I've done my research right, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Harry Redknapp offered you a 2-year apprenticeship at Dean Court, but rumoured to be worth about £5,000. But you turned it down for a move to QPR. So what made your decision to go to Loftus Road rather than Dean Court?
Because at the time, when the actual money that was offered to me, my older brother Brian was at Bournemouth at the time, and Harry had spoke to Bournemouth, and then Harry had offered me the 2-year apprenticeship and basically a year pro. But I thought my chances. I'd been to QPR and played at QPR, and there was other clubs that were interested in me at the time. I just liked the feel at QPR, and basically felt more wanted there than I did anywhere else, and I felt more at home there. So that was my, it wasn't about money. It wasn't, it was what I basically thought would best suit me.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But while at QPR, did you train with any of the stars of the future there within their?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as the youth team, it's not like it is now where, the first team basically train on their own. When I was growing up, yes, we had the youth team and the reserves, but you would still have suddenly, a game where you would be playing against the first team, or he would get everybody together, and you'd have mix and match. So, yeah, I mean, obviously there was, some good players at the time when I was there at QPR Internationals, and some good quality players.
So, who was the manager at the club at the time?
Terry Venables.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, what was he like to work under?
Terry Venables to me was absolutely magnificent. He knew everybody in that club. Don't matter who it was, he knew everybody. He took time out. He always used to speak to people. He'd stop and ask you how, like if the first team were playing at home on a Saturday and we was playing in the youth team or the reserves and we had a game and we come back, if he saw you, he'd ask you how you got on. You'd say, like, we got beat 2-0, say, for instance. He would say, I didn't ask how the result went. I know how the result went. I'm personally asking how you thought you went. Yeah. And he used to take time out to ask. And then, obviously, to me, he was a good man manager.
Excellent. And it must have been pretty cool to have a former Tottenham player as well as your manager as well, being a Tottenham fan. So, yeah, I'm sure that was great. In terms of Terry, just touching on him before we move on, do you think really as England manager, he probably should have stayed on after Euro 96? Do you think he would have been successful as England manager?
I think he would have, yeah, personally. I think he would have. But, it's hard in hindsight, and it's easy in hindsight, should I say, to say, well, yeah, he could have done this, he could have done that. But no, I think, it's like I always think Brian Clough should have been England manager.
Well, yeah, that is one manager. Yeah, definitely should have probably been England manager, isn't it, Brian Clough? Yeah, no, definitely. So while at Loftus Road, what was your sort of number one memory if you look back on your time there?
I think a lot of it was just growing up and maturing, really, because, I'd always lived at home. I left Swindon at 15. And it's not easy, moving. Yes, I know it's only a few hours drive away, but, living in somebody else's house, and, having to make your own way here, there and everything, and, watching the money because, you're on apprenticeship wages.
Yeah.
And you got to budget everything. And, yeah, I think it, taught me, how to grow up a little bit quicker. Okay,
cool. So after your spell at QPR, you moved back home to Swindon, who at the time I think were in the 3rd division. How did the move back to Swindon come about?
Well, because obviously when I was playing for the youth growing up, we had Swindon schoolboys, and a lot of the players that I used to play football with, a lot of them had all gone and signed apprenticeships at Swindon Town. And Swindon obviously offered me an apprenticeship and a pro deal. And then when I got released from the apprenticeship at QPR, at the time again, Bournemouth, Harry asked me brother to see if I wanted to come. And also Swindon, but my mum and dad were living in Swindon, and it was just easier for me then to basically moved back home with my mum and dad and signed for Swindon.
So while at Swindon, I believe you, if I've done my research right, I believe you played under Lou Macari. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, what was he like as a coach?
Well, everybody has different opinions. I mean, I wasn't a great lover of Lou. I didn't really think me and him saw a great deal of eye to eye. Didn't really have a clash, but I just didn't like his man management and his management of the team, basically. You know, like I said, I come from a club like QPR, and you see the way Terry Venables, you know, and other managers that had been there after Terry left. But obviously, then you see the way Lou Macari dealt with things. It was chalk and cheese. And
Okay, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, to learn like about different. Obviously, I know these names. Obviously, I know Terry Venables very well, but obviously, I know the name Lou Macari as well. But don't know as much about him. I believe he played for United during his career. Is that right?
yeah, Lou Macari was a centre forward at Man United.
Yeah. But in terms of a manager, I don't actually know much about him. But so after, I think, if again my research is right, you made about 40 odd appearances for the reserves and the youth teams. You were released, and then you joined Salisbury. What was the difference between like the Southern League Premier divisions and pro, being in the pro leagues and being involved in pro clubs?
Well, obviously, when I went to Salisbury, obviously it's only training once, sometimes twice a week. Whereas when you're at the pro clubs, you're in every morning, and training every morning. Normally from 10 till 12:30, 1 o'clock, unless it's pre-season. So yeah, that was a difference. And then at the time when I left, when I was at Swindon, I think I was on about £120 a week. So suddenly then I was earning, like £100 just playing for Salisbury, plus doing a job. I was earning more money and basically playing regular every week as well.
Again, I'm assuming obviously Harry's probably made an offer for you or come knocking for you again, because in, I believe, March 1988 you signed for Bournemouth. Was that a case of Harry coming after you again?
Yeah, Harry come again, and then obviously asked and said, did I fancy coming, and basically come on like a non-contract to start with. So it was like basically come and play for the reserves and see how things went. Basically a 3-month trial, and see how it goes, and basically take it from there. And I'm not sure if at the time I was still on a non-contract with Bournemouth and then still playing for Salisbury at the same time.
Right. Oh, okay. That's interesting. I mean, obviously coming down to Bournemouth, what was your first impressions of Bournemouth, as a town, and how come you stayed in the area after you left Dean Court?
Well, I mean, obviously I'd come down many a time anyway to, because my brother was here, my oldest brother was here at the time. So we'd come down to Bournemouth. We would also come down, we'd had breaks down here with little holidays at the beach and things like that. We'll come out for a couple of days. So eventually as well, when I did eventually sign for Bournemouth and stay in Bournemouth, the reason being is because I had kids and basically me 3 daughters were all at schools, and we had moved, from Swindon up, and, at the time we was then settled in Bournemouth, and basically when I was going to go to another club, I didn't want to uproot the whole family, and take them out of schools and keep doing this. We were settled where we were, and that was our decision to stay with, in Bournemouth, and I'm glad we have.
Yeah, I totally understand that with obviously young children that uprooting them while they're at school. Yeah, I completely understand that. But while at Bournemouth, you had several loan spells as well, I believe. Weymouth, Yeovil, and Torquay. I mean,
Yeah.
was that part of the development for your game, or was it to get game time, or was it a mixture of
I think it
sources?
was a mixture of both. I think Harry was saying to me, obviously, that he wanted me to get a little bit stronger, I think, and he wanted me to be have more physical games with, because obviously the semi-pro in the Conference League, and obviously also then at Torquay when I think they were in Division 3 or whether it was Division 4, I'm not sure. And it was basically, to me get a little bit more experience, because even we was playing in the reserves, you still had a few ex-pros, but then, you still had youth team players as well in there. So I just think it was to gain a little bit more experience.
Okay, yeah. You made your debut away to Oldham Athletic for Bournemouth, I believe during the 88-89 season. What can you remember from your debut?
I think I was sub that day,
Right.
and basically I think we was losing 2-0 at the time or something like that. And Harry just went, go and get warmed up then. And that was it. And then basically he said, right, you're going on. And obviously, you're making your league debut, nervous and everything like that, excitement, everything all rolled into one. I think it was about 15 minutes. That was all I had for, as my debut.
Excellent. And then I suppose no looking back after that. Harry,
No,
let's
once you've made it, then, or once you've had a taste of it, then you
yeah.
want more of it. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I can only imagine it must be amazing to make your professional debut. Just on Harry a little bit, if we could, as a gaffer. I mean, how did you rate him as a coach and as a manager?
Yeah, Harry is what Harry is. Do you know
Mm.
what I mean? Everybody sees him. Everybody knows what he's like. Yeah. There ain't no in between with Harry.
Yeah, yeah,
If you've peed him off. Do you know what I mean? And if he's happy with you. So.
yeah. I mean, what was his stronger point? Was he more stronger as a coach or as a manager?
Yeah, I'd say as a coach. I mean, he put his opinions across well as a coach. I mean, yeah, coach or a manager. I think yeah.
Yeah,
You knew where you stood with H, I think. So
yeah, and he's definitely one of the characters of the game. We've been
yeah.
lucky to have him on our pre-season shows the last several years. So yeah, he's a great character as Harry, as everybody knows. But it's always interesting to hear as well from someone that's played under him what he was like as well, because obviously we see, you guys probably have seen different sides to him than what we possibly get to see. But
Well, yeah, I've seen the good sides and the bad sides of him. Do you know what I mean? Even
yeah,
other players would have seen it. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah,
but that's what I'm saying. That's where you knew you stood with H.
yeah. How would he rank out of all the managers you played under? I mean, we'll touch on a couple of others you played under a little bit later on, but how would he rank against others, or was that too difficult to answer?
Yeah, because they're all, I mean, all different in all their own ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And like anything in football's all to do with opinions.
yeah,
And players can say, well, well, I didn't like him. Is that because he didn't pick you as much, or
yeah,
do you know what I'm saying? So yeah,
yeah.
I mean, his man management and what he was doing, H. I mean, the only thing I would say was, some of the tips that he used to give were terrible.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I got to ask about being branded as a utility man. I mean, that's not something really, we really hear a lot of these days. I mean, how did you become known as a utility man? And out of all the roles that you have played, I mean, I know you said earlier, obviously you scored 14 goals as a youngster, and you grew up playing as a striker. Was the striker your strongest role, or did you feel you could adapt anywhere on the pitch?
No, I was one of these. I think I could have played anywhere on the pitch. I could kick with both feet. But obviously it was Harry that played me in more positions than anything, because suddenly, he'd have an injury, whether it being centre half or someone in midfield, and, he'd need somebody to fill in the slot, and then he'd ask me to slip in there, which sometimes is good, but then on the other side of the coin, it's not, because then when you're, like say, for instance, if he's played me centre half that day, if Paul Miller or even right back and Mark Noose was injured, as soon as Mark Noose got fit, he was the club captain. I knew I would definitely not be playing the next game because Noose would be coming back in.
Yeah.
So it was one of those. Do you know what I mean? So yes, it's nice that you can play here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
But on the other side, it can also hinder your career because you get classed as a utility player. So you don't really play in one position all the time, and you're not then the main pick.
Yeah. Did you give any confidence to think that Harry could trust you in a number of different positions? Did that give you any sort of confidence to your game, or?
Well, I was a confident player anyway. So obviously, I think Harry saw that anyway, that I was confident, and obviously we would have had, even when he played me left back when Mozzie was injured sometimes, or or even if Keith Rowlands, if one of them were out injured, he knew that I could still ping a ball down the left with me left foot, whereas, some players basically would then pull it, a natural right footed would automatically come inside to kick it. So we would have had training sessions and he would have seen that I would have been comfortable and he could have relied on me. So, yeah, he would have chose me to play in them positions.
Yeah. I mean, you've touched on training sessions there. I suppose, back in your day, it was a case of training across at Kings Park or anywhere you could find a piece of grass to train on, I suppose, back then.
Yeah, I mean, there was many times over Kings Park you'd be training and then you'd end up, with dog feasts on you because, you'd have a sliding tackle. We'd be going around with the little cones and flicking it, off as you're marking the pitch. So, yeah, I mean, that was what we was used to. Do you know what I mean? Them kind of, training sessions. And then we started going to Chapel Gate a little bit later on. But, yeah, the majority of it was over at, Kings Park, wherever we could basically, get a feel to play on.
Yeah. I mean, at your time at Bournemouth, is there any, games and goals that really stick in the memory?
I always remember the Newcastle game in the FA Cup at St Mary's when it went to penalties. That one. I remember the game when we played against Wolves, only because Andy Much, I was playing centre half with Pete Shearer at the time because we had a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
And I remember it was against Steve Bull and Andy Much. And I remember Andy Much doing me off the ball, but luckily the linesman called it and got him sent off. And I think we ended up winning that 1-0, that game. So, yeah, I mean, there was a few games that we've had. But, yeah, I would say out of all of them would be, I suppose, the Newcastle game because it was nice playing, in a packed stadium at St James's Park.
Did you take one of the penalties?
Yeah. I took the second one.
Right. Okay. If I remember, didn't Vince make a save?
I think Vince did make the save. Yeah, we ended up winning. Sean Brooks got the winner, took
That's
the final penalty, and we ended up winning 5-4, I think it was, or 4-3 on penalties, one of the two.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember seeing some footage of it. I mean, I was only about 4 years old at the time, but I do remember seeing the footage back in the archives. So, Bournemouth, you played with some great names. Obviously, you've mentioned
And Ipswich, I think Ipswich away in the FA Cup, because that was the only time I've ever been sent off in my career. So obviously that will always
stick in your mind.
Stick in my mind, yeah. With that,
why were you sent off?
Chris Kawamia was clean for on goal, and
right, took one for the team.
I basically thought you weren't scoring. So yeah.
No, fair play. Obviously, you've mentioned, and we talked about briefly some of the names you played with at Bournemouth. I mean, what players really stood out for you? I'm sure I could probably predict a couple, maybe like the likes of Luther and
yeah, I had a great rapport with Luther. Luther was brilliant. I'd say, you had so many different players with different characters. Do you know what I mean? You have Big Willow. Noose was the captain. Mozzie. I mean, I still say hello to Mozzie now and again when I see him. Then you have people like, Matty. I was playing with Matty. I was growing up with, and sharing rooms with Matty. Then when Matty left, I was sharing rooms with Sean Till.
Yeah.
Then you have, Gavin Peacock. I knew Gavin Peacock when I was at QPR.
Yeah.
You had good players like Sean Brooks, Bish. Those two players were, good quality players. Like I said, that, everybody, Chief up front, you can name loads. Do you know what I mean? Even some of the younger lads, Keith Rowlands and all that lot that went on. And so, I could go through the list of them and say, memory with this and memory with that. So, Wayne Faraday. I knew Wayne from QPR, and then I knew Wayne when he come to Bournemouth and so forth. I still speak to him now and again.
Yeah.
So, it's, there's a lot of people that I've got. I would never say I would be like, one-on-one where me and him was really, really close. Because I got on, with a lot of players.
Yeah. No, when I look back at the old team photos there, it seems like a real good bunch of lads all together there, and some great names as well. Some great names who had some really good careers as well between them. So, I mean, while at Bournemouth, obviously Harry went on and Tony Pulis come in. How did he differ from Harry?
Well, it was a style of play, really. Harry, we had players at the time, like I've just mentioned, with Bish and Brooksy, and, you'd get the ball and that would be your first fault. If I was playing fullback, I would think, well, I'd get it and roll it into Brooksy or roll it into Bish and make another angle for him. But that was under Harry. Under Tony, Tony didn't want that. Tony was more direct. Tony was like, well, 1 foot, get it out, ping it up the line. Which, in all honesty, any Tom, Dick or Harry can do, in my opinion. It wasn't, wasn't one for me.
Yeah.
But that was Tony's. That was the way Tony liked to play, like Wimbledon and things like that. And he's done it wherever he's gone. He's had success at places. So yeah.
I mean, while at Bournemouth, he did obviously with the financial problems and that. I think he had to sell. I think didn't he make like £3 million out of player sales or something like that while he was at the club? I think he had to sell quite a few players, didn't he, while he was at Bournemouth to try and balance the books. But he did sign a certain Steve Fletcher. Do you have any memories of Fletch?
Yeah, I was there. I was playing. I played a few games up front with Fletch when they signed him. I think he was 18, 19 from Hartlepool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had played a few games up front with Fletcher at the time. So yeah, I remember when Steve come.
Yeah. Did you think that he'd? I mean, even back then, did you think he'd have such a long association with the club?
No, if I be honest, no.
No.
No, he's done well to have, such a long career at Bournemouth. Yeah, so, fair play to him.
Yeah.
But no, I wouldn't have thought he would have been at Bournemouth for, 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I've got a question here from Malcolm, who works on the channel with us, and his question is: did you have a favourite teammate at Bournemouth? If so, who were they?
Well, really, I wouldn't have said I have a favourite. Do you know what I mean? Because, like I said, I'm one of these. I talk to everybody and get on with everybody. I used to hang around a lot. Most of the time with Matty Holmes. That would have been me and Matty growing up. Because we were similar age. So yeah, and then obviously later on, it would have been, I would have said more Sean Hill, but then, Sean Brooks was my neighbour. Sean Brooks lived 2 doors away from me. So, I used to travel in with Brooksy. So, no, I would never say, I couldn't, then I used to share with Richard Cook as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The ferret. So, yeah, it's, I would say, no, I couldn't honestly say, I would honestly, I've got one favourite that I was growing up because, no, I got on with everybody.
Got on with everyone. Yeah. Yeah. He also asks another question. Was there any funny moments that you can recall during your time at Dean Court?
No, well, yeah, but well, I remember once we went. I think it was Portugal on a end of season tour or something like that, and there was a few of the senior pros, should I say, that went out for a drink in the evening, and we wasn't allowed. We was on a curfew.
Right.
And me being a young 20, 21-year-old went out with the senior players. And then we got back in early hours after a few sherbets and got seen by Harry and Jimmy Gabriel coming in. And then there was basically a few of them were getting threatened and to be sent home and basically find a week's wages. And I remember Harry bringing me in and saying, what the canal do you think you're doing going out with senior pros? I said, well, I just went out. And he said, well, listen, he said, you've got certain players there that are in the first division drinking. He said, you ain't even in the Vauxhall Conference compared to them. So yeah, it was just one of them, and it was just a silly one. But then there was also when we used to have the players' profile. It was another one, and I remember at the time I put down, I think my favourite drink was lager, and Harry pulled me after it was in the programme and said, "What are you doing putting lager?" But the week before, Paul Morrell, who loves a beer, put banana milkshake.
Oh, great. Yeah, no, great. Thanks for sharing those. So your time at Bournemouth, I mean, came to a bit of a surprising end, I believe. Why did your time at Bournemouth come to an end?
Well, it's obviously a matter of opinions again, like football is. And Tony was the manager at the time. Tony had offered me, my contract was due up. And and Tony said obviously he was going to offer me another contract. And then I got a little injury, I think a couple of weeks before the last few games of the season. I chipped a bone in my ankle. And then on the very last game of the season at home, I asked Tony when shall I come in and sort out about the contract? And he said, no, I'm going to give you a free now. He said, because I've just signed Russell Beardsmore. So
Wow.
he said, he said, you're basically surplus to requirements now. He said, you're no longer needed. So that was how basically my time at Bournemouth finished.
Okay, so obviously not wanting to leave the club, but you were given a free. Brentford was your next stop. Griffin Park, signed for Brentford in August 1993. But you were a target for the previous manager, if I've done my research right, Phil Holder. Phil Holder, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But that move broke down. I mean, what was the story?
Yeah, it broke down. Obviously, he had to balance the books and obviously try and get rid of a couple of players, but it never materialised. So, yeah, I never ever ended up, going there under Phil. But then I got there through Dave Webb because at the time Stuart Morgan, who I'd known at Bournemouth, was on the youth teams or running the youth and reserves at Brentford. And obviously Webby was looking for a bit of a, striker or utility player. And Stuart recommended me. So off up to Brentford I went basically for a month's trial. And then they offered me basically after the month they offered me, the rest of the season and the following year.
Okay. Webby, obviously, as an association with Bournemouth, he obviously won promotion with Bournemouth in the early 80s. I mean, how did you get on with him as a manager and his playing style?
Yeah, Webby, I mean, we used to call him Bullseye, the players. Yeah, I mean, under Webby, exactly the same. You knew where you stood. There were no airs and graces with him. Yeah, he could be ruthless when he wanted to be. But again, yes, is man management. He was okay as well on that aspect.
I mean, at Griffin Park, you started playing at right back, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, they had. It was a lad that come down to Bournemouth. Me mate that I know, Brian Statham. He come down. He had got injured, and we hadn't. He didn't have anybody there, and he asked me if I could fill in there. So I filled in there. So yeah, I filled in there, and exactly the same. I was playing in then a few positions. Again at Griffin Park.
Yeah. But then I believe a training ground punch-up led to you playing up front and a high point for you scoring a hat-trick against Bristol Rovers. What was the story behind the training incident and then you playing up front and your hat-trick?
It was Mickey Bennett and Joe Allen. Those two were basically had a bit of a heated, as you do sometimes in training, you catch somebody late or, whatever like that. And that's what happened. Joe had caught Mickey in a late challenge and Mickey got up and reacted and swung a punch and basically broke Joe Allen's jaw. So then it was basically we didn't really have any strikers, and Webby was looking for somebody to play up front, and Stuart said to him, "Well, why don't you play Denny? Because that's where Denny used to always play." So then he put me up front with Ian Benjamin. I think he had got Ian Benjamin in. So me and Ian Benjamin then started playing up front.
Ah, right, okay. I think during your spell there was, I think they were restructuring the divisions. I think they were downsizing the Premier League. I think finished second, but you had to go through the playoffs, but lost in the playoffs to Huddersfield on penalties. Did you, as a team, feel robbed that season of promotion, considering you finished second?
Yeah, 100%. We played Huddersfield twice that season, and we beat Huddersfield twice. I think Reading was one of the other sides in the playoffs. I can't remember who the other one was, but I think, in all honesty, because I think we was about 15, 16 points or something like that. I can't remember the pointage that we was over Huddersfield, but
wow.
I don't think, I still think we should have gone up, but it's one of those.
Yeah.
Not to be.
Yeah. Difficult.
Yeah. It's difficult.
Out of your hands, because obviously the restructure, but if you were like 16 odd points ahead of third place, you would expect to go up automatically, really, wouldn't you? But you say, it wasn't to be. So your relationship with Webby, I mean, he described you as having an extravagant lifestyle. Is that right?
Yeah, that was where it comes to the abrupt end at Brentford. Obviously, I was my contract was due. I was, commuting a lot. I was living in my aunt's at Basingstoke, and I just wrote off my car. And obviously, I had to get another car, and basically, I said in the contract, is there any, a little signing on fee basically to help towards the car. And then he put out in the paper that I was basically, the money I was earning, I basically should have been, I was drinking champagne and caviar every night, which was very far from the truth. Because basically there was like the Brentford fan zones, and I basically showed them the contract that I was offered, which they asked if they could print. And I said, by all means, because I was being, classed that I was being greedy, and basically I was on so much money when, in all the truth, I wasn't.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. It's when I was reading that, he described as having a extravagant lifestyle, that wasn't kind of the answer I was expecting you to share with us there, to be honest. But your spell at Brentford, though, you describe it as a spell that meant most to you than...
I mean, I loved it at Brentford. I loved, it was my granddad's club. My granddad was a Brentford supporter. And, the fans were different class at Brentford. And, I don't know whether that was because I played more at Brentford in such a short spell, that I enjoyed it more. Plus, nearly getting promotion and everything like that. But I had a great time there with a good bunch of lads.
Yeah, it's I used to love going up to the old Griffin Park, because it always seemed to be a very unique. You don't have those kind of stadiums anymore, do you? They're kind of a dying breed now. But I always remember the 4 pubs on the corner.
Yeah.
yeah, great memories of going up to Griffin Park. Obviously, they've got a lovely new stadium now, and obviously those kind of days with those stadiums are unfortunately long gone. But
Yeah.
great memories of going up to Griffin Park. Yeah, great ground to go to. What was used to be one of my favourites many years ago when we were in the old Division 2 and that. But Brighton and Hove Albion, your next stop. You signed a month's contract under Liam Brady. Obviously, everyone knows Liam Brady as being an Arsenal legend. How did you get on with Liam?
Yeah, I got on okay with Liam. Liam was only there as a short spell as well, because obviously again, he was looking for somebody to play up front. And he had been recommended to me from Jimmy Case, obviously, who I know Jimmy from Bournemouth.
Mm-hmm.
So Liam asked me to come up. I went up and basically played up front. And yeah, after basically a month, he was only there not too long. And then obviously the chairman got rid of Liam and Jimmy took over as basically manager. And then Jimmy signed me. So, yeah, I think Liam signed me till the end of the season. And then Jimmy offered me another year when he took over. But yeah, I got on okay with Liam. He was, what I did have involvements with him. He seemed a good manager and, knew his stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Had a great left leg even then, even at that age.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I know a bit. I've read a bit up on Liam Brady, and yeah, it must have been such a privilege to play under such a legend of the game. But I mean, another legend of the game as well, who you actually played alongside and then was managed by. I mean, Jimmy Case. What was Jimmy like to play with as a player? First of all,
Jimmy was quality. You knew with Jimmy, obviously, he could put it about Jimmy. But he was also a good laugher and, someone who liked to laugh and a joke. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if you had your backs against the wall, you would want Jimmy in your team because he could sort a few people out if he needed to.
yeah,
People go on about, and they go on about Vinnie Jones being an hard man.
yeah.
In all disrespect, he wouldn't have tied Jimmy Case's shoes.
Wow,
Not a chance. Not a chance.
wow. That is very interesting to hear.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, yeah. I would never have thought that, but that's yeah, very interesting. He wouldn't even be able to tie Jimmy's bootlaces. That's very interesting. In terms of Case as the manager, then did he transition from player to manager pretty well? Or
He did, Jimmy, but I mean, in all honesty, Jimmy was such a nice, easygoing fella. Sometimes it was hard because he just wanted to be your mate. And then obviously on the other side, when it come to, being the man management, and giving out the rollickins, sometimes he would give it, but you would think, well, he's all right. He's my mate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I like Jimmy personally. There's another manager that I did enjoy.
Obviously, while you were playing for the Seagulls, it seemed to be quite a difficult time, maybe on and off the pitch. To be fair, was that around the time you lost the Goldstone ground as well?
Yeah. I had one season at the Goldstone. We was at the Goldstone, and then obviously, that then got sold. So then we had to go and basically they were renting Gillingham's ground.
Yeah, Priestfield. Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
was travelling, our home games was all the way over in Kent, which was a nightmare. So, when I was still living in Bournemouth at the time. And obviously I was commuting every day to Brighton.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you've got a home game and you've got to go to Kent. And we used to travel up on the day. So it was then me saying, well, I've got to then travel from Bournemouth all the way to Brighton for 2 hours. And then from Brighton,
Oh, yeah.
there, just to do a home game. I said, in the end, I was driving from Bournemouth myself to Kent every day. And it was just, it's no fun when you're driving 3 hours, just a home game every day.
Yeah, it's long enough, long old journey every time, isn't it? That for a home game. Wow. I mean, your professional career came to an end, unfortunately, at Brighton. I mean, what injuries were you struggling with at Brighton to sort of call time on your professional career?
I had a bad ankle injury. I didn't break any bones. It was just a little rupture of the Achilles, not the Achilles, the ligaments, which never seemed to heal. But what basically done it was I had a back operation. I had L3 and L4 of my disc out. And basically the surgeon said that I can't carry on playing, sport in pounding on me back, because basically you'll need L5 operated on in years to come. Touch wood, I haven't at the moment, but he said your back won't stand up to it. So that was it. Basically, the club then, it was Steve Gritt was the manager.
Yeah.
And Steve had, because it was weird, because just before Jimmy got sacked, I had gone in, I was struggling with my back, and I was seeing that season, I was seeing chiropractors, I was seeing masseuses, everything to try and get me, fit so I could play games. I was having injections and things like that. And Jimmy, then when they found out it was me back that was like that, Jimmy said to me, if you don't carry on, if you can't carry on, do you fancy becoming the youth team manager at Brighton? He said, give it a thought. He said, just in case, stay in the game and this, that, and the other. And then Jimmy ended up getting sacked of his duties. Steve Gritt took over and then basically said to me, well, we know what the club have said, the doctors, and, you can't carry on. So we're going to end up relieving you of your duties. So,
okay.
yeah, obviously, then he brings his own men in and, gets everybody then to run the club. So.
Okay. But you went back into non-league with several clubs, I believe.
Well, I only went to. I went and played back at Salisbury to start with.
Yeah.
So I think it was Jeff Butler was the manager at the time at Salisbury, and I played under Jeff when I was first at Bournemouth. And I played a few games, and then for Jeff, but Jeff said obviously at the time he couldn't afford to buy me, basically pay me what I wanted because of, they wasn't in that financially, and he had to get people off of his books. And then Bath City asked if I I would go to them. And I ended up going to Bath, and the manager that took me at the time, I got on with, and then he ended up having an heart attack, and the club released him of his duties, and the assistant took over, and me and the assistant never ever saw eye to eye. And basically, the final straw when I was there was basically the manager at the time at Bath turned around and said that I haven't got enough experience really to be playing in the Vauxhall Conference. And my words were, well, a few swear words to him, but basically I said to him, you know, stick it where the sun don't shine, and walked out and basically said that, I said, you know, keep me contract, do whatever, but I won't ever be back.
Wow.
And that was it. Never, from that day, then not played.
Bizarre. That's such a bizarre thing to say to someone who's played pro level football, to say you haven't got the experience to play in the Vauxhall Conference. Wow. That's yeah, I'm sure you did select a few choice words there. Definitely. Well, you've mentioned your older brother Brian, who also played for Bournemouth. How many games did Brian play for Bournemouth?
To be perfectly honest, I haven't got a clue how many he ever played, because he left Bournemouth and then obviously he ended up going to, I know he played for Cambridge, and then he played from Cambridge, he went on to Northampton. And then from Northampton, he went abroad and played out over in Malta with an Cherries mate, Ian Lee, the goalkeeper.
Oh, yeah, Ian Lee. Yeah, I know that name. Yeah.
So
wow,
they were over in Malta playing. So, yeah, to be honest, I don't know. I couldn't honestly tell you how many games he played.
Wow. Okay. I think I might have seen a goal of his on YouTube somewhere, but I might be wrong. But now obviously both your football days are over. You work together as wall coaches.
No, see, everybody puts it that we work together. You know,
no.
We both do coatings.
Yeah.
We both, he works for a London company.
Right.
Up in London, obviously, doing it. You know, I subby some of my work off of another company. I've got my own company that does it as well. So,
right.
yeah. So, you know, everybody says, you know, we work together. We don't. I haven't worked with my brother in years and years.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, how did you both find the transition from pro footballers to doing sort of like an everyday self-employed kind of job?
Well, when I first ever come to Bournemouth, you know, my brother was doing wall coatings at the time. And so when the season finished at Bournemouth, obviously we had the 6 weeks off. Yes, the club used to pay us, you know, our wages. I think at the time I was on £120 a week or £150 a week, if that. And at the time, my brother was doing the wall coatings and said, look, I could do with a help. Will you come and help me? So in the close season, I used to go and help my brother, and he'd pay me like £10 a day to help him out. And then obviously it was more money for me to basically get by on.
Right.
So that's how I got into that, you know, industry. And, you know, then once I eventually retired, you know, I got offered a job because I was back down in Swindon at the time, I got offered a job in Honda factory, and I couldn't see myself working indoors. And then I started doing this job again with my brother at the time, and basically it was with the London company that then offered me a job. So, yeah, I mean, I enjoy, you know, being self-employed now. work when I want.
Yeah.
You know, go here, there, and everywhere. So, you know, I used to travel, you know, all over the country doing it. Now I don't. I'm a little bit older now, and I don't need to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, it's just I just think, you know, going from every day, you know, training and then going to do a you know, a like a you know normal job must take some kind of period to transition into. Is it something like you got to get your head round that you're not
Well,
playing?
you have in a way, but then on the other side of the coin, you know, I left football. I earned more money in my job than what I ever did at football.
Football. Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah.
to me, yes, you're grafting. Yes, you're not doing the hours like you do as a footballer.
Yeah.
Um,
But
you know,
earning more.
when I was playing, you know, don't get me wrong, there was players on some good money. I've
Yeah.
never been one that was, and I'll be honest, it was never on really good money.
Mm.
So, you know, I enjoyed my football career, which I did, but yeah, I've enjoyed what I've done now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I mean, did you want to give your company a quick shout out while you're on air?
Well, it's just Denny, exterior texture coaters specialist. Basically, you know, I coat the exterior of walls and do, you know, any remedial work, which is, you know, changing of bricks on it and, you know, repointing, bit of rendering, facing up, and basically, you know, then it gets sprayed with a plasticized textured coating.
Right. Okay.
You know, which is a waterproof coating on the exterior of your properties. So,
Right. Okay. Okay. So if you need any of that work done, Denny's your man. Quick question before we couple of last questions, and then we'll wrap up. I've got a fan question. Cherries fan Ashley Collison, who's asked, "How come you never went into coaching?"
I think if I had been given, you know, if Jimmy was still there and I'd gone into it at Brighton, then maybe I would have. But at the time, you know, I was out of work. You know, I had a wife, I had 3 kids, I had a mortgage, and the bills had to be paid. So,
Yeah.
you know, if you've got nothing, you know, coming in, or, you know, the season's finished and, you know, I don't know how I am, then, you know, the bills have got to be paid some way. So, yeah, I ended up taking this job because I knew I could do it because I
Yeah.
had been doing it beforehand. So that was why. I think, you know, if I had been given the opportunity, maybe I would have. Maybe I would have liked to have gone into it. You know, I'd like to earn the money that they earn.
Yeah. Yeah. But understandable. I do understand, obviously, you know, when you're in that position, you know, I suppose you've got to take, you know, like you say, to pay the bills and the mortgages and that, you've got to take, you know, any work that sort of comes along. But yeah, no, I do understand that. But just before we wrap up, obviously, you know, the 3 clubs that we've mainly talked about, obviously, Bournemouth, Brentford, and Brighton, they're all in the Premier League now. They've all established themselves, really. I know Bournemouth had that slight dip when we dropped back down to the Championship for a couple of seasons, but you know, all 3 clubs are pretty much established themselves in the Premier League now. What's it like for someone like yourself who played for those clubs, and you know, you can see them, you know, on Match of the Day every week, and you know, on Sky, and you know, playing all these top level matches now? Is that anything you ever visioned for any of those clubs while you were playing for them?
No, I could never have envisioned of any one of them that I was at, you know, that basically they would have all ended up getting into, you know, the Premier League. Obviously, I'm glad they all have,
Yeah.
because I've got, you know, I still look at it all the time, obviously, for their results to see how they get on. I mean, my youngest grandson's a massive AFC Bournemouth supporter anyway. He's a season ticket holder. He goes there to watch. So, yeah, I always like to see how they've done, and I'm pleased that they're all up in the Premier League.
Yeah. Do you think this season ahead that, kind of, I mean, I think maybe Brentford might struggle a little bit this year, but I mean, what do you see the three teams doing this year?
I can see, obviously, Brentford will struggle a little bit because of, losing, the striker, and obviously maybe both of their top strikers, and the midfielder to Arsenal. But then also I can see, Bournemouth have lost a couple.
Yeah.
You've lost a couple, and I think, House in the centre half was a good centre half. Kirk as the left back was a good left back. So suddenly when you do lose good players, it does, it can hinder you, your chances a little bit. Hopefully, though, somebody whoever steps in and takes their place can fill their boots, and they won't be missed.
Yeah. Hopefully all three clubs can continue their long stay in the Premier League. Well, Denny, it's been absolutely fantastic to have you join us. It's been great to hear about your career and the stories you've told us. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
No problems, Matt. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Good luck for the season. All the best. Take care.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Talksport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.